Alright, it's been 10 years since the first Zombieland movie, but once again, it's time to nut up or shut up. I haven't had a Twinkie in 10 years, and it's not terrible, but it's not worth risking your life throughout the zombie apocalypse to get. Whatever. Hey everyone, it's Alexander, the real Mr. Robinson, and this is my review for Zombieland Double Tap, which is the sequel to 2009's Zombieland. This movie brings back the same cast as the first movie, Woody Harrelson, Jesse Eisenberg, Emma Stone, and Abigail Breslin, and the same writing and directing team of the first Zombieland. This movie follows our heroes as they're living in Zombieland. They're now a fully dysfunctional family. Abigail Breslin's character goes off with this hippie from Berkeley, and the rest of the characters try to go after her, make sure she's okay, while they come across some other characters throughout Zombieland. So I was actually planning on doing a review for the original Zombieland from 2009, but I just didn't have the time to do the review, and also I wasn't planning to review this movie for next week's annual series of horror/Halloween related movie reviews. So really briefly, I'll just say that I loved the first Zombieland when I first saw it in theaters, but I haven't seen it since. And when seeing the sequel, they were actually doing a double feature of both movies. So I had a chance to rewatch the first Zombieland since 2009, and I actually like it better than I did the first time I saw it, because there are a lot of jokes in this movie that I missed. There's a lot of clever sight gags, and the writing is just superb. It's a really great script with great actors that pull off their roles to perfection, and it has one of the best, if not the best, cameo in motion picture history with Bill Murray. And I was a little skeptical yet curious for the sequel, because 10 years nowadays is a long time to get a sequel out. Although I suppose in Zombieland's case, since it's kind of a cult movie, it makes sense for the sequel to come out a decade later. But I was really worried that the same spark that made the first movie so great wasn't going to be around this time. And rather, it was just Sony going, you know what, we have this movie that people love, let's just make a sequel. It's been 10 years, but why not? But I'm happy to say that Zombieland Double Tap is pretty damn funny. I don't think it's as great or as clever as the original Zombieland, but for a sequel 10 years later, it does its job very well. The characters are just as you remember from the first Zombieland. Woody Harrelson was always my favorite character in the first movie, and he's still my favorite this time around. Well, I guess when you're talking about the four main characters, because his personality is just so... it's insane. He just delivers a great performance, and his chemistry with Jesse Eisenberg, who is the polar opposite in terms of a personality, is just so good. Jesse Eisenberg is also great as well, even if he goes back to that same awkward, nerdy performance that he did back in the day. Similar to what Michael Cera did, he's still good, and hey, still better than Lex Luthor. Emma Stone and Abigail Breslin are great as well. The characters, again, they didn't change, and the fact that they're more close to each other than they were in the last movie, you buy into the relationships more this time around. But unlike with the first Zombieland movie, we actually have some more characters this time around. This time around, we have Zoey Deutch as this dumb blonde tag-along. There's some explanations for how she actually becomes a part of this group, but she actually is maybe my favorite new character in the movie, because she's just so stupid. Like, she is the typical dumb blonde stereotype, but she is just so adorable. I've always adored Zoey Deutch originally, but in this movie, like, she's a character that should be annoying by all means, and she might be annoying to some people, but she just made me laugh every time she was on screen. But then you have the polar opposite of her, Rosario Dawson, who, again, I love Rosario Dawson, and she is badass. Like, she's a character that comes in a little later in the movie, but she still gets her time to shine, and Rosario Dawson never fails to disappoint. It's still got some really funny gags, and the stuff they do with the zombies and the world building is just clever, and there are a few points in this movie where it can take some unexpected turns. Some of them are pretty interesting with the different types of zombies that the characters have labeled, just so they can tell them apart. But for the clever things that this movie has and a lot of the funny moments, there are definitely some moments in this movie where I feel like the writers dropped the ball. For one thing, they do some comical gags that I just felt were kind of lazy. In the trailer, you see that Luke Wilson and Thomas Middleditch are in the movie playing characters that are nearly identical to Woody Harrelson and Jesse Eisenberg, and that scene plays out exactly how you imagine. And it's not terrible, but it's just not all that clever. It's a gag that we've seen a couple times beforehand in other movies, and in my opinion, done better in other movies. There's a couple points in this movie that go unexplained, and they are actually plot details that will make you scratch your head and go, wait a minute, how is that possible? What? And also, there were a few moments in this movie where it actually looked cheaper than the first Zombieland. Now, I had to do research before doing the review, and the budget for this movie is doubled what the first Zombieland was. And it just doesn't make sense because there are a lot of big, sweeping CGI shots of either buildings, landscapes, or giant zombie hordes, and they don't look that good at all. They look terrible. So it just confuses me how a movie with twice the budget of the original looks worse in some angles. But that's the CG stuff. Like, this is not a really CG-heavy movie when you get right down to it, because the practical work with the zombies is still very good. There's a moment in this movie where Woody Harrelson stomps down on a zombie's head, and it basically crushes, similar to how Michael Myers killed the doctor in the last Halloween movie. And again, the zombie gore effects are pretty impressive. So I don't have much else to say about this movie. The first Zombieland was a huge surprise when it came out because it was original, it was clever, and it was the first. It really was the best comedy the year it came out. Sorry, Hangover. But this movie, while not bad, I would say it's very, very funny at points. There are a lot of moments where I got genuine belly laughs, but at the end of the day, it's just not as clever as the first time around. Still, a pretty good movie. I just wouldn't say it's great. Because, again, there are a few moments in this movie that I find to be lazy in terms of the writing and the gags, but the movie still has the same level of charm as the first one, and in some aspects has its own charm. So I wouldn't say you'd be disappointed if you saw this movie, but just don't go in expecting it to be as good as the first one. And there you go, that's my review for Zombieland Double Tap. And now I want to know what you guys think about the movie. If you've seen it, what did you think? And what are your opinions on the first Zombieland? Whatever the case may be, let me know in the comments below. And until next time, I hope you enjoyed this review. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, give this video a like, and of course leave a comment. Don't forget to support my Patreon page, follow me on social media, and until next time, this is the real Mr. Robinson telling you there's only one.